Alright, what's up guys? Today we have a new video. We are discussing the other festival, which is the Fusion XYZ festival. There is a pretty comprehensive ban list for this one, so some of the decks that you think you might be able to play, you can't play. But we'll go real quick through the loner decks which are available. Dancing with the Beasts, which are lunalights. This is actually also available in the other festival. So if you build a lunalight deck, it's actually available in both festivals, which is pretty cool. And it is overall pretty fun deck, and can both it can go both routes. It can go the XYZ summoning route, and it can also go the Fusion summoning route. Overall, this looks to be a pretty good loner deck, honestly. Next, we've got Wondrous Wings. This is Lyrilusks, which they did hit to some degree. But overall, I think it's a fairly good deck as a loner deck, honestly, and it's another deck that you can play in both festivals. It's at lower power in the other one, but they're both kind of decent. And then we've got Pendulums, which is the Odd Eyes deck, and again, pretty cool loner deck. I'd say out of the three loner decks, probably the strongest one is going to be the Lunalights, just because it's essentially a full power, and Lunalights generally is a pretty cool deck, and this might be your only opportunity to play it if you don't already own it. But let's get to the built decks. Alright, so first up we've got the budget deck of the event. So this deck is actually Cyber Dragons, and it does have a lot of URs and SRs and stuff like that. But keep in mind, this deck is actually a structure deck in the store, so you can just pay 1,500 gems and get this exact deck. You can get three of this deck, and then have everything essentially that you need to play this deck, and it is almost fully unlocked. The only thing missing is the Cyber Dragon Link Monster and All Mirage. That is it. Everything else here is totally at full power. It's playable. The entire point of the deck is to make a cyberdark end dragon, and he's essentially this dude right here. He's unaffected by all the other card effects, and it's just very, very tough to get over. You also have access to the Cyber Dragon Infinity package, which is a negate. Basically, this deck is just naturally kind of a deck that XYZ summons and Fusion summons. Yeah, you do Link sometimes, like I said, with All Mirage and Zeger, but for the most part, this deck is almost entirely at full power. All you have to do is buy 3 of the structure deck, and what's really cool about buying 3 of the structure deck is this entire by just completing this event, not even the daily stuff that you're getting, just completing the event and just getting the gems from the event without the unlockable ones, like just the missions, you're already getting more than 1,500 gems. So you're essentially getting a deck, plus you're getting more gems, plus you're completing daily. So it's actually a really good deal. This is probably the best on paper budget deck of the entire event. Next up, we've got Heroes. Heroes are almost fully unlocked. The only thing Heroes are missing are their Link Monsters, which is not the end of the world, because yes, the Link Monsters are important because they help you recycle resources, and they help you with the just generally with the dark half of the deck, but it's not the end of the world. You still get to make Dark Law, you still get to make Phoenix Enforcer, you still get to do all of the same stuff that you would have done. I guess, yes, there's slightly less consistency because you don't have the availability of the Link Monsters, but for the most part, the deck is pretty much the way it was played before Links ever came out. So the deck still does a lot of the good stuff. It still makes Malicious Bane, it still makes Dark Law, it still makes Phoenix Enforcer. If you want to, you can still play Plasma, and you can still very easily make Plasma, and Plasma is essentially like a skill drain. But the deck is pretty much at full power. The only thing it's missing is, like I said, a couple of Link Monsters. Other than that, pretty much nothing got hit on this deck. And if you already own it, it's not a budget deck by any means. As you can see on screen, the amount of URs and SRs here are not, this is not a cheap deck. So if you already own it, great, but I wouldn't recommend building it specifically for this event, because it is a very, very, very expensive deck, and I don't think the gems that you earn from this will allow you to basically build this deck. But overall, I'd say it's a really good option. All right, the next deck we've got here is Madolche. Madolche is another deck that is essentially unhit. The only thing that isn't available is the Madolche Link Monster, which is, it's important to the deck because it's nice that it's there. But it's not like, if you play a Madolche combo, it's not always necessary to go into it. It doesn't actually take that much away from the deck. The entire Earth Engine is still almost fully available. So in terms of the Earth Engine, we've got the Vernus Loose, and we have the what are these, the Shizu cards, which are pretty much all here anyway, so it's not the end of the world. The only issue with this deck, much like Heroes, is if you don't already own it, it can be very expensive. Now this deck seems to be a deck that continues to be useful in multiple events. For some reason, over the last few events, Madolches have been at full power. We had like the Earth Festival, just a variety of festivals where this deck has been at full power. So it might not be a very bad deck to craft just to have sitting in the back pocket. And overall, it's a fairly good deck in the metagame. It's always at least like tier 3, so, and it never ever gets hit, so that part of the deck is actually quite nice. So overall, I think it's a very good selection for the festival. But if you don't already own it, like I said, it can get expensive because there are a lot of URs here, as you can see. Next up is the most expensive deck in the entire game. This is called 8 Access. The entire point of the deck is just to go second. You blind second, break your opponent's board, and basically attack them and end the duel just like that. That is the entire objective of the deck. You use a bunch of level 8 / rank 8 monsters, you use a bunch of kaijus. You can use Owner's Seal to return control of all kaijus and lava golems and all that stuff back to you after you tribute your opponent's stuff. That's basically the entire point of the deck. I should probably add trade in because there's so many level 8s here. I should probably add trade in. So the huge issue with this deck is the same issue as the last two decks, which is the cost of this deck is very high. It is the most expensive deck in the game. The main deck has a bunch of URs. The extra deck has a bunch of URs. There's just a ton of URs in this deck. So that might be your real like big issue, is the fact that there are just so many URs that you have to run, which is kind of frustrating. But this deck, I can imagine, has a pretty, obviously I haven't tried it yet in this festival, but it can break most boards. And yeah, it's just very good. It's just very expensive but very good. And overall, even in the regular metagame, it's actually quite a competitive deck. So if you do want to pick it up, it's good both in the regular metagame and in this here. So overall, fairly good deck. Next, we've got Zodiac. Zodiac's another deck that did get hit somewhat. It's not like the end of the world. So basically, this deck lost the extra deck monster, which is the I think it's Borbo, which is the one that can attack directly. And basically, you attack directly and then you make Zeus. So that basically is what's lost in Zodiac. So you can't just make a monster that attacks directly. But what you can do is you can play a bunch of going second cards, basically tear through your opponent's board, and then attack them with literally anything, and then make like a 6 material Zeus. That's essentially the entire point of the deck, is to make a 6 material Zeus, and then your opponent just can't get ahead, because every single time they try to do something, you send everything to the graveyard. Basically, this deck is like Zeus Turbo. You can also add the trap card too, the Zodiac trap card, to recycle materials out of the graveyard. There's a few modifications that you can definitely make to this deck, but overall the deck did get hit, but it's still very playable. Still a very strong deck in the game. Yeah, I'd say it's not obviously a full power, but every single one of these decks that I've showed you has gotten hit to some degree, just by either losing monsters, by losing their links, or getting hit. This deck got actually hit on the ban list. The other ones just lost a few link monsters. So overall, it's still a very strong deck, and quite easy to play, and actually quite budget, because the reality is the only UR that you actually need to craft if you don't have Zodiacs is Trident. Everything else, if you look here, is all staples. So you just replace them with staples that you have, which is actually quite nice. Again, Trident is the only UR that you need to craft. Everything else is SR, R, R, N, stuff like that. Everything else is basically just regular cards, and then the remainder of the cards are all cards that you should own if you regularly play Master. And like I said, if you don't have some of these staples, you just replace them with other staples. So probably one of the cheapest decks that don't require you to spend gems. So if you have 30 UR dust, you basically have this deck, because I'm fairly sure you're going to have a Zeus. I'm fairly sure you're going to have most of these hand traps. So overall, probably the most budget deck. So even if you don't have the best win rate, it is quite good for getting through the ladder and unlocking a lot of the things. Plus, this deck will unlock, so if there's going to be a challenge that forces you to XYZ summon, which obviously I don't know yet, but if there is, like let's say you need to do 20 Xseed summons, this deck can do like 6 Xseed summons in one turn. So easy for completing those challenges. Alright, the last deck I'm going to show you guys is branded. I prefer to play branded with Blue Eyes, so I mix it with a little bit of a Blue Eyes engine, not a huge Blue Eyes engine, but obviously you don't need to do that. You can also just mix it with the old way to play branded, which was you can use the Fright Fur cards, and then that, because obviously the only thing that they really hit is Lubellion, I believe, and yeah, I think Lubellion's the only thing that's really hit on this particular version of the deck. It's just Lubellion. And branded opening is at 1. So branded opening is at 1 and Lubellion is at 1. But the rest of the deck is essentially at absolute full power. It's exactly the same way that it was played before. I like playing the Blue Eyes engine because it can use this card, which is the Branded in High Spirits. Branded in High Spirits can search out Kit, and then Kit, wherever she is, can actually search out Branded Fusion. So it's essentially another copy of Branded Opening, another copy of Aluber, just by having the Branded High Spirits engine available to you. And then of course we've got the extra deck here. You've got, the only thing I got hit in the extra deck is the Albion. He got hit, but again, it's not the end of the world that Albion got hit, because you obviously have a ton of other options. So you can recycle Albion with the trap card, so him getting hit is not the end of the world. But overall, I think the deck is pretty close to full power. If you enjoyed this video, definitely leave a like below. And if you have any recommendations whatsoever that I missed for this festival, definitely let us know. And thank you for watching. La, 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 la.